They wanna hear me, but I'd rather stay alive. They wanna free me, leave me alone on my grind. Call me cutie, I like how they realize that I'm here to stay, that I'm reaching for the sky. And they need me, 'cause all I've already tried. Will you love me? 'Cause you looked into my eyes. Call me cutie, I like how they realize that I'm
Barbershop Talk. Yoda is back. In fact, Baby Yoda is back. If you haven't got your Disney Plus yet, find a friend or find a friend of a friend and make sure you look at The Mandalorian. Baby Yoda is taking over. He's back and we're back. Get ready for Barbershop Talk Minnesota. Here we come. Saturday, 12/7/10. We have John Edmonds here from Olmsted County. And then we also have Rochester City Councilman Michael Wojak. So get your Yoda on, get your coffee, get you ready, get yourself ready, because here we come, Barbershop Talk. Again, welcome to Barbershop Talk. Hopefully your Thanksgiving was great. If you're like me, I'm still in the tryptophan fit after going home to Indianapolis to see my family and eating that great turkey, that greens, sweet potato pie, the whole nine. But hopefully you had a great Thanksgiving and you're going into a great holiday season as we anticipate Christmas and Kwanzaa and Happy New Year and so on and so forth. So happy holidays from Barbershop Talk if we forget to tell you. But thank you for tuning in. And just to get you going on what's going on in our community, we wanted to let you know that we are doing our first annual calendar for Barbershop Talk. It's our fundraising calendar, and as there's a lot of fundraising going on during the holiday season, we thought we would jump in as well. But with a different emphasis, we are having a fundraising calendar, and we have local leaders on that calendar. We won't tell you who's on the calendar, but if you purchase the calendar, you get the calendar. Not only will that you get the calendar and see the various leaders around our communities, but also it will go to a worthy cause. So look forward to that. We are starting to take orders. That calendar is $20. We've had local leaders join in with us and said, yes, we'll put our picture in this calendar and be a part of the calendar. So make sure you purchase your Barbershop Talk fundraising leadership calendar. It'll have various leaders throughout the community. We won't tell you who they are, just to keep the suspense up. But it is our way of, one, fundraising and making sure that we're making an impact in the community beyond what we do here. And then two, also to give the positive imagery of what our people do in the community. So make sure you buy a calendar, $20, and it will go to a worthy cause, also helping us here at Barbershop Talk. So that is coming, and again, you can begin to order, okay? So check out these other things that are going on in our community.
At Greenhouse Graphics, we offer award-winning design services at affordable rates to help your business attract customers and ultimately affect your bottom line. Working with you one-on-one at whatever stage you're at in developing your brand. I want to help drive success to your business with excellent design and quality marketing materials. From startup companies in need of custom graphics, websites, logos, to seasonal maintenance, I got you covered. I take time and listen and care about your needs. I understand that image and quality mean everything in business when it comes to leaving a lasting impression on your clients and customers that lasts a lifetime. With nearly 2 decades of experience, it is in my DNA to create eye-popping graphics for your business. Greenhouse Graphics, making sure you always look your best.
All right, Barbershop Talk, as we do in our barbershop, and certainly as we mimic what is done throughout barbershops, and throughout America and internationally, we keep it real on subject matters, and we use it as an anchor to talk about things in a fun and positive way. So these are the topics we will cover today. Is Rochester a utopia for diversity? In the last month and a half, we've had various events that have focused on diversity. The Racism Conference. Dr. Soul talked about mass incarceration. Next week, we have Moms Demand Action, gun violence listening session. Just this past week, Regina Mustafa on the basics of Islam. And also just this past week, Keith Ellison, our Attorney General, came down and had a great listening session on hate crimes. The Unitarian Church spoke to these issues. Given all we do, and this is in the last month and a half, are we there as a community as it relates to diversity? We'll chop it up on that. And then, get back here to the Democrats. Kamala Harris resigned from running for POTUS, and the Wall Street Journal and other folks have brought up this issue. Is the Democratic Party becoming less diverse, given that in the next debate, none of these candidates will be on the stage, and it will be vastly Euro-American, if you will. And is that an issue for the Democratic Party? Is it an issue for our national parties as a whole? And then we'll get into the Donnie, You Crazy segment. We'll talk about Baby Yoda and how Baby Yoda is taking over everything. To be good to know if the dudes in the shop are into Baby Yoda like I am. And then we'll also go for one more here. Rochester gentrified. We continue to talk about this issue, but it came up in the listening session this past week. We want to hit it again with our folks that are here. So tune in for this Keep It 100 segment as well. All right, welcome Barbershop Talk. It is Saturday, December 7th. December came so quickly. I still have this tryptophan fit going on about that turkey in Indianapolis. Well, we cooked it up. Well, we killed it. Well, yeah, I know you wish you was there, because Chicago, nobody in Chicago can cook. Well, but Indianapolis?
Y'all hear that, Chicago? Y'all hear that? Y'all know where you work at, right?
That's right, that's right. Well, welcome to Barbershop Talk. Thank you for tuning in. We are a online show, grassroots, as you can see. We are here for our community. We really have a passion for the at-risk community, the African-American community. We love to live by Paul Wellstone's, the late Paul Wellstone's saying, we all do better when we all do better. And that's what we are about here at Barbershop Talk. We are privileged to have John Edmonds here, and we'll get into it with him here in a couple of seconds. But we want to welcome you. There's a lot going on this holiday season, a lot of different things. I want to quickly get out to you a couple of things. One is we are doing our first annual Barbershop Talk calendar. This is a fundraising calendar in which there's two focuses of this calendar. One is to promote the positive imagery of our people. We know a lot of times in media, and that's a lot of what this show is about. We want to make sure we see the positivity of us as a culture, right, the voiceless community, the at-risk community, and that's what this calendar is about. 12 months out of the year, local leaders and folks have jumped in to be on the calendar. And then the second goal of that is to fundraise. We, as you know, we're grassroots here, but we do need extra funds to help us grow and go and where we're going to be going. So part of the money that we will hopefully gain from that will go to help Barbershop Talk, but another portion of that, a larger portion of that, will go to a local initiative. So we'll get more information out about the Barbershop Talk fundraising calendar. I want to say thank you to all those that have jumped in to be a part of that calendar. So that's coming. Bud has something also.
Next Thursday, we have a father-daughter's dance here in Rochester at Century High School. You can look on my page for the flyer. We'll be sending the flyers out through the schools and through the churches and through some of the community organizations, presented by Boss Ministries.
Ooh, yeah.
Tune in. It's going to be a nice one. We got DJ. We have a fashion show. It's going to be a nice one. Tune in for it.
Okay, and we'll make sure we have all that information up, but we wanted to make sure we cover that up from the jump here to make sure you are in the know. As we do at the Barbershop Talk Show, we jump into the debates, our Keep It 100 segment. Again, we are privileged to have John Edmonds here, and we've given his the rights whether he wants to jump in or not. But let's go right at it. Gentlemen, in the last month and a half, we have had the 2019 Overcoming Racism Conference. We've had mass incarceration in the age of color and blindness by Dr. Jason Soul, and I forgot to mention Dee Sobel got that racism conference together.
Yes.
This past week we had the Basics of Islam ran by Regina Mustafa. That's kind of what she does anyways, but she does a good job there. Then this past week as well, we had the community listening session in which Keith Ellison, the Attorney General came down. Huge. A lot of folks turned down. So yeah, we need to get him on the show. Attorney Ellison, please come down.
Come on.
And then this week we have a listening session on gun prevention.
Okay.
So my question is Rochester a utopia? Have we, for diversity? We've gotten there. Look at all these events, right? We are.
I believe it was something with the Humanize My Hoodie yesterday too.
Oh yeah, Humanize My Hoodie
again.
Right.
Yeah.
So my question is, given all that we do, have we reached the diversity nirvana? We're just so diverse, it's unreal, and folks can look to Rochester as being the apex of what it means to be diverse.
What you got, John?
That should have been a Donnie You Crazy segment.
What you got for us, John?
I don't. Yeah, there's no way. I mean, I don't think. I think Rochester reflects the rest of the country. I mean,
yeah,
we've got a long way to go.
Long way to go.
And in a lot of ways, I think Rochester is behind.
Yeah.
As a community, I mean, those are all good things to have happen, but we haven't addressed, the structural issues, structural racism and repression and all that kind of stuff. So
that's right.
I mean.
So we're getting there. So how do, and we'll get into this more when we get in our discussion with all the work that you've done. How do we pivot? I mean, in the month and a half, all of these things have happened. Boom, 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 boom. In some respects, the rumor is, well, they checked the box, we got it done, and now we're diverse. How can we encourage, things to happen beyond this amazing listening session and now going into action? But we can talk about that more. But it was just interesting. In a month and a half, all of these events have happened. Huge, big turnouts, and we are here. All right, the next one is, last week, Democratic candidate for president, Kamala Harris, stepped down from running for POTUS. My inkling is she's looking for that VP nod, but we won't go into that. But there was some discussion. Wall Street Journal put on an article that, particularly with the next debate, I think there's only going to be 5 or 6 folks on the debate.
Yeah, I think it was 5.
5, and all of them are Euro-American. And the diversity of Julian Castro and Cory Booker and all of them, that is not going to be reflected on that stage. Is that an issue, or is it just America? We just got to deal with it.
I think it's clearly an issue. I mean, me personally, it's like I'm tired of only relying on old white men to run, run the country. Right. So if you don't have, if you're not at the table, you don't have a chance of having a voice.
Right.
And so I think it's shameful that we don't have.
It really is.
It is. How do we? because it's just going to be so. I don't even want to tune in. Like, okay, whatever. So evident, and I'm supposing that they'll probably go for some diverse VPs. But how do we fix it? Obviously, we got to get folks out to vote. This article is saying that the TV publication has had something to do with why more diverse folks are not at the top of the ticket, or at least stated in the debate. So not only Republicans are struggling with this, but we are as well. Well, Democrats are as well. Be careful. Okay, this is only for my own psychology. This is the Donnie Are You Crazy segment. And this segment is dedicated to that one individual in the crew or in the barbershop that's always saying crazy stuff. And it was great to go home for Thanksgiving because we had that dynamic there. Okay, Bud, John, have you seen Star Wars?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just need to know from my own male psychology, are you into the Baby Yoda with the Mandalorian?
I haven't seen that yet.
You haven't seen it? Okay.
I've seen the stories about Baby Yoda, though.
Okay, so you have. So I'm not the only one. Bud, what's up? You into?
No, I haven't seen it, but I am into Star Wars. I haven't seen it yet.
Okay. So
what's going on with the Baby Yoda?
There's 5 episodes off of Disney Plus. You know, talk to your buddy if you ain't got it. You know, or you can do it free for 5 days. That's what I was going to do myself. But I won't let you know what's going on with the show. But there is this Baby Yoda. It's all over the internet. There just means everything. So so my manhood is not lessened by liking the Baby Yoda.
Baby Yoda is cool.
Okay, good. Okay, that helps my psychology. That's right.
What's wrong with Baby Yoda, man?
That's right. Okay, good. So now I feel cool.
Liking, Baby Yoda?
I didn't sell out of nothing. All right, good. All right, the next Donnie You Crazy segment. Speaking of these diversity events, I've been to like 3 or 4 of them, and you all know when these things go. When you go there, it's not heavily attended by people of color, but it's heavily attended. And the people of color are usually the ones presenting or on the panel. Same situation with the hate crime listening session. And I'm there and I'm like, wow, concerned citizen, all that kind of stuff. But it helped me conclude on one thing. Rochester is gentrified. I used to say it's getting gentrified because of DMC. It is gentrified. And I'm not saying it's a negative thing, but I think we just got to say, hey, this, and it's happened around the nation, so to be fair on that. But Rochester is gentrified. And I don't mean it doesn't necessarily reflect the Euro-American culture as it does money, but this town is becoming, I don't want to say less diverse. And typically people say it's so diverse because of male, but in the community, I don't know.
Yeah. Gentrification. Is it a good thing or bad thing? For us, Chicago right now going to another level of gentrification right now.
Yeah.
As we speak.
Yeah. I don't know how they're doing in these bigger cities.
Another level, man. You know, they sending everybody out to the suburbs. The housing, everything is going up. Building a lot of infrastructure. Going unaffordable housing. It's getting, it's everywhere. So, the first question, you talked about why are we not showing up to these events?
Right.
That's the question. How can we get our people to show up for diverse events?
Is it because we don't feel we have a voice, or what? It is weird. I mean, it was even, and I'll be careful on the panel. It was a hate crime panel. There were 3 Muslims, great, on the panel, D, and then the pastor. But 1 of 3 black men are in, criminal justice. It was no, Keith Ellison represented that. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird. We don't come out for these events.
You can promote it, you can talk about it, but they don't come. What do you think, John?
I think so. I think some of that is, one is we don't have a critical mass. We are diverse, but we don't have a critical mass of people of color in this town.
That is true.
It's still sort of remarkable when you see a person of color. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's not like if you're in Minneapolis or New York City or Chicago or something. You don't think twice about seeing a person of color. It's like, that's part of the deal. So I think that's one issue. I think the other is that there's a real, which connects also with the gentrification issue that you brought up. There's a real class split here in terms of income, and
that's right.
You know, and so people who are lower income, I think are busy struggling, trying to get you know, trying to make ends meet and all that kind of stuff. Don't have time for, or don't see that they have a voice or have an impact.
Right.
I think so. That's part of it. Not feeling like my coming there is going to make a difference. And so, you know, you combine all of those things together, and I think that's what you tend to, that's what you get.
And maybe some of these just need to be more intentional, but it will be good to see, and we'll get into some of the great things that you have done, see this reflected in policy. And another issue of this, man, and you see this, but I'm sure you see this as well, John, going to these smaller towns, they are dealing with issues where the social services departments and whatever, they can't handle these issues, and those folks, they want to live here, or they would live here, but they can't afford to live here. So the Steele counties and the Winona counties and the Osceola counties, they're dealing with these huge issues. And when I do my work going into the social services, they are just overwhelmed. And they typically, well, we won't do anything, we'll let probation take care of that, and then that's how it's handled. Dealing with a couple of those issues right now. So that's a big issue. But we want to say, welcome to Barbershop Talk. We are privileged to have an icon, a community icon, in that of John Edmonds here today. A trailblazer in many respects, and we thank you, John, for coming here. It is a privilege. You have graced this place, and now we are ready to rock because you have come here. We appreciate that. So tell us, I mean, you've been a social worker for a while. How did you get into the biz? No, before that, you were from New York, the NYC, right? What happened?
What part of New York are you from?
There's only one part of New York, and then there's the rest of the world. I mean, there's
yeah.
What city? New York City, huh?
Yeah, New York City.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
all right.
Wow. So what made you migrate here? Was it like most people, education, a family, blah blah blah, and then you got stuck? Joking, but
no. Actually, I mean, so I've been here now for, I think it's 23 years. And so I came at a point where, I mean, actually, what actually brought me here was two things. I mean, one is I had a lifelong friend. I mean, he just passed this year, actually. And you know, and reflecting on that, I mean, he and I have been friends for about 50-something years. But he and I grew up together in the city. And then he moved out here right after college, and so I would come out here and visit, and so I knew I didn't come to Rochester, but I came to cities, and so I knew the area, and at that point in time, I had a feeling of, like, I really liked this area. And then so fast forward, you know, about 30 years, and I was at a point where I was like 49 years old. I mean, so that place where you start to think about your priorities, and you know.
I'm close to that.
Well, you know, so it's coming. It's coming. And I also, and so I had done a number of things in this. You know, my career had gone a number of different ways. You know, I mean, I kind of joke that I have a shelf life of 10 years. So I would tend to spend 10 years doing something, and then I'd go do something else. And so I got to that point, and I was coming to some realizations about what was important to me and what the priorities were. And then I happened to meet Karen, my wife. She lived out here, and at that point, it was a question of, again, what was important to me, and do I want to stay there or do I want to come out here? And it was like, okay, I always wanted to be out here, so here I was. So here I came.
Opportunity.
Yeah, and back when in my 20s, I didn't feel comfortable just dropping things in New York and just moving out here, you know, with nothing, and you know, I didn't feel that confidence. At 50 or 49, it was like, I can handle this.
Right.
So I came out here with no job, and a couple of weeks later, I had a job. So, you know, so the rest is kind of like, this chapter at least is history. And so when I came, I got hired by Olmsted County in Child and Family Services.
Oh, really?
Yeah. As a social worker, and I had two things that they hired me for. One was to do child protection, but the other was to develop programs for African Americans. I mean, and so I give credit to the people who were in charge at that point, had that kind of foresight in 1997. But at that time, I was the first African American social worker.
Whoa!
Here,
that's history.
Icon.
Well, yeah, I know, but not sure about being an icon. But that's the reality. I mean, it's like I was the first one, and since then, you know, there've been other people who've come behind me. But so it was a challenge, but it was also an opportunity to, and I give credit again to those folks who were, you know, in charge, who gave me some latitude and some freedom to do some things, and try some ideas out. So
have you always been in the social service field?
When you was in New York?
Well, when I got my master's in social work in '71, and so I've always been in something. Either I started out in mental health, and then in adult mental health, and then I kind of went off into children's mental health, and then into working in a combination child welfare, child mental health thing. And then, and at the same time, I was also teaching and doing some things out there, you know, at the college level. And so it's always been some kind of a social work, but it's been in, you know, different roles. I mean, either doing direct work or doing supervision or doing administration.
Wow.
And then when I came here, it was back to doing, because that was another part of my own transition in my own head of wanting to go back to doing more direct work. So that's why, you know, doing actual child protection was, you know, was okay with me at that point.
Nice.
So coming to Rochester '97, taking on a whole new community, and then having the burden to run African American programs. What was how was that experience for you?
As I said, it was challenging. I mean, it was, you know, it's like when I look at the community then, and when I talk about, you know, it being remarkable, even now when you see people of color, then it was really remarkable.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
You know, I mean, it's like you just didn't see anybody in the stores, you didn't see, you know. Now it's much more, that's much more common, and so it's, you know, that's less remarkable. But so to feel like, I don't know, to feel like the spotlight is on you, I'm not sure that I could have done that younger than I was. I think at the point that I came here, I was like,
had some maturity to deal with.
Yeah, you know, and it's like it didn't faze me as much to do that. And I kind of had more of a sense of who I was and what I wanted to do and what I saw. Well, I didn't know that right when I first came, but it became clear to me what some of the issues were in this community.
So tell us about DIG. I've heard of it like 3 years ago, I think, and what that means and what that means to the community.
Well, DIG is an acronym for well, now it's an acronym for Diversity and Inclusion Group, and it's a council in Health, Housing, and Human Services. Originally, it was the Disproportionality Integration Group, and before that, it started because, you know, like I said, when I came here, I was 49. I'm 72, and so, you know, about 4 or 5 years ago, or 5 to 6 years ago, our director in Child and Family, Jody Wentland, and I were talking about, okay, so what's going to happen when you leave? I mean, you're not going to be here forever. So what she did, she asked me to pull together a work group, to look at the issue of disproportionality and disparities affecting African Americans, other people of color. And out of that came this group. The people in the group named it DIG.
Okay.
And then as we, you know, over the years, we developed some protocols, we developed a charter, which laid out what the responsibilities were. And basically what DIG is, it's looking at making systemic change. It's recognizing that all of the things that we tend to talk about as the outcomes of racism and oppression are really symptoms of an underlying disease process.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, institutional racism, systemic oppression, historical trauma, all of those things are the root causes of the outcomes that we see, where you know, either lack of school success or incarceration rates or poverty levels, all of that stuff are symptoms. And so if you're going to change that, and this is my, you know, how I've approached this, is you have to deal with the root cause. I mean, you can deal with the numbers, the symptoms, but you also have to deal with that underlying root cause. And to do that, it means you've got to change things on all levels. You can't just be, and I don't mean to disparage like the different kinds of educational programs that we have, but that's not sufficient.
Yeah, you're right.
We've got to change policy, we've got to change practice, we've got to, as well as educate people.
That's right.
And so what DIG does, DIG's mission is to do those things at those different levels. And so we've gotten to the point, and again, I credit the administration of in the county being supportive of that, where we now have been formally recognized as a council.
Oh, nice.
And so we have 3 sub work groups within the council. One is on workforce development, recruitment, retention, as well as the promotional, because the other thing about, I was the first African-American social worker, so now that's not a novelty, right? We've got other African-Americans, Africans, Hispanic, you know, people of all ethnicities and races. But we don't have people at the supervisory level.
No, sir, no, sir, no, sir, no, sir. Yeah, you're right.
So I was like #1 there, you know, so it's like, you know, and some of this stuff I don't even, you know, it's like I recognize in retrospect. You know what I mean? As I look back and think, oh, okay, well, it didn't occur to me at the time, but that's the way it is. And I think now, I know there's at least one other African-American woman who's a program manager like me. But a county this size, you know, when we've had those, you know, meetings of all the supervisors and all the department, you know, there's just me and her. That, you know, that shouldn't be in 2019.
Should not be.
Nope.
You know,
we got to reflect the community. Should be reflect.
Particularly when your percentage totals are up to 30 to 40 to 50% of African Americans or minorities.
Right. But the thing is, so some of that is the result of, some of that is not intentional. I mean, I think a lot of it isn't intentional. But it's like if you hire the, you know, people who look like you, and then you promote from within people who look like you, what you're going to get is
people that look like you.
Right. Yeah. And so one of the things the workforce group is looking at is, as I said, is not just recruitment and retention, but it's also looking at the different levels, making sure that there's access, making sure that there are strategies developed to, you know, to begin to bring more people into those upper levels in administration in the county. So that's the workforce group. There's a training group which is also looking at how do we train folks, how do we educate them, how do we give them, you know, the knowledge that there is, because if you, well, so how do we give them the knowledge of what the issues are? I mean, we need to have, people need to know that, need to understand that. And so the programs that you mentioned, I think, are steps in that direction. One of the things that we just did with, in the beginning of November, is we put on we had a training program on implicit bias, which we made mandatory. We brought in, I don't know if you have ever seen the film Color of Fear. Okay, so one of the gentlemen who's in that is by the name of Hugh Vasquez, who's one of the men in that, is now a trainer, has been doing that for years. We brought him in. We made the training mandatory. We had 626 staff in health, housing, and human services who attended that training. We did it 2 days, you know. That's the first step in raising that consciousness. Now, the next challenge is how do you follow up on that? So it's not just a one and done, you know. And so we're working on that too. You know, we're we're building a strategy for following up on that. So that's what the training, and the other thing the training group is doing is looking at our county training system. And one of the things that they discovered in reviewing that is if you go to the county, because you have access to the OCU, the Olmsted County University?
No.
Oh, you don't? Okay. But one of the things one of the people on the training committee discovered was that when you search for trainings around diversity, first of all, they're hard to find.
Right.
And then when you do find them, they all have to do with managing diversity. You know, well, no, but it's just a term. Managing is like as though that's a problem that you have to manage. You know, rather than either promoting it or supporting it or whatever. So that's one observation that came out of that, and then so we're looking at how do we revamp the whole training program that people get, and this implicit biasing is one of those efforts. And then the third part is assessment quality assurance. So that when we ask that, we're going to be asking each department to come up with a strategic plan for how they're going to deal with diversity, inclusion, all of those kinds of things. And we're going to hold them accountable. And this group is going to also help them strategize, but also measure their progress.
Right.
And so on. So
that is amazing.
Yeah, it is. Good.
So I mean, and this is why I say you're a trailblazer, and you've got that going on. You had Project Hope.
Yeah.
Right.
And there was
those are two programs. Yeah, I started Project Hope and PACE.
Yeah, there you go. Project Hope and PACE.
Yeah, back in, I think Project Hope was the first program, and that started actually in about 2003 or 4. And the first iteration of that program was parent education. So we were going to do this program that focused on parent education for African American families. It became clear, so this was part of my learning. I mean, so I come in and it's like, oh, okay, we're going to do parent education. But what I soon discovered was that wasn't the issue. I mean, it wasn't that Black folks need to be trained how to parent their kids. There were other things that were impinging and impacting their ability to do that. And so if you're poor, you're living in precarious housing. You're lacking resources.
That's right.
You can't then say, well, but you really need to go and sit down and read to your kids.
Right.
I mean, those are all good things. Those are wonderful things, but those are aspirations that need to come after you deal with some of those very practical, concrete issues. So then we took a break for about 4 or 5 months and retooled, and then developed. So Hope then became a program that responded to basically whatever the challenges were that families were facing. So which was much more on point to.
And is that when the name changed to Hope to PACE?
No, PACE is a different program.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, something different.
And so one of the other goals of Hope was recognizing the. Well, let me back up. In 1999, the state legislature, identified out-of-home placement of African American kids as a problem that needed to get studied and strategies developed. And so they set up a committee called the African American Disparities Committee. And so there were state people, there were people primarily up in the cities who were, nonprofits involved. But there also were 4 counties, and these were the 4 counties who had the highest rate of out-of-home placement. And those were Hennepin, Ramsey, which is not surprising, Anoka, and Olmsted County.
Makes sense.
And so we were involved, and I was involved in that from 2000 on for about 10 years.
Okay.
One of the things that emerged out of that was each county was then charged to come up with how they was strategy, how they were going to address it. And so the other counties tended to come up with things having to do with how were they going to lower the amount of people who were in out-of-home placement, basically how they were going to address the numbers. My sort of analysis of the problem was that it isn't about numbers. Numbers are simply, I mean, the analogy that I didn't use at that point, but that I've kind of gravitated to in later years, it's like if you have a child with a fever, and you take their temperature, and the temperature tells you that they've got a fever and how high the fever is and that sort of thing. You can then do things to lower that fever, right? Cold compresses, Tylenol, whatever it is, but you can get the fever down, but you haven't addressed the underlying disease process.
Right, exactly.
And so when you look at the plight of African Americans, what you realize is, depending on where you're coming from, so if you're coming out of a corrections lens, you tend to look at incarceration rates, among other things. If you're coming out of a social service lens, you look at out-of-home placement. That's what DHS was doing, so foster care rates and that sort of thing. But when you take a step back and you look, sort of like at the whole forest, what you realize is that every social measure that there is, whether it's incarceration, school success, poverty rates, life expectancy, health access, healthcare access, housing, home ownership, every social measure that you can think of, African Americans are at the bottom of the scale.
No doubt about it. Yeah.
So that then he's told me, and I think, I think I can make a persuasive argument that it's not about the numbers. It's about all this other stuff that's underneath that institutional and that institutional racism and systemic oppression and all that kind of stuff. And so going back to Hope, where Hope came in was coming out of that realization that we needed to look at how do people start out, especially in social services at least, how does it manifest itself? How does this underlying process manifest itself? How that happens is that African Americans over-reported for abuse and neglect, compared to their white counterparts who do the same thing. Their kids our kids wind up in out-of-home placement disproportionately to white kids with the same reasons. And so if we want to interrupt that pattern, we've got to look at those forces and factors that are impacting the families, but we also need to create access points to service. Because the other flaw in our service system is that, and this is still the case, still today the case across the state, is that with very few exceptions, the only access to services is through child protection.
You're right. Yeah, you're right.
So if you have a family, either of you come up with, identify a family in need. If you live in some other county, an African American family, you may call social services, but they won't do anything unless it becomes
a child protection issue.
Which is sort of true. The horses are already out of the barn. And so if you want to impact over-reporting and then also interrupt that pattern of kids winding up in out-of-home placement, you need to create access points. So Project Hope became an access point. So you didn't have to have a child protection report, you just had to have a concern.
That was important.
That is amazing.
So what happened? I mean, because that's important to have that access.
Well, yes.
So why is it still here? Because I think that's really important.
Why
isn't it still
it is still, well, okay, it is, for all intents and purposes, it is. What happened so the next iteration was AIDS. And so HOPE is an acronym for Hope, Opportunity, Pride, and Empowerment. That was what that was about. So PACE started because we also looked at the processes that were happening, the negative ones, the negative outcomes. And we saw that African American kids were also the least successful in school. That if for males particularly, if you didn't graduate from high school, you had basically between 72 and 75% chance of winding up incarcerated.
Okay.
So if we've got the overrepresentation of, huge incarceration rates, you can keep, if you kind of track back, you can see that school success becomes, and then now, people talk about the school to prison pipeline. Well, that's what, that's what that's about.
Yeah.
So again, we thought if you can intervene before the wheels come off the rails and ensure and support kids in their educational process, what you're going to do is one, interrupt that pattern of suspension and expulsion, but also long term you're going to impact incarceration rates. So over the years we had these two programs going, and then it became kind of hard to distinguish why would you send somebody to HOPE as opposed to PACE?
Okay.
Believing that, understanding that the kids, are all going to be involved in school.
Right.
They have to be.
Right.
So why make that distinction? It became harder. It just was a practical thing, and so we just sort of merged the two. So PACE exists.
Okay. Yeah.
Still. And out of PACE also we started to develop, we developed a mentorship program.
Yeah, I've heard of that, yeah.
Called LEAD, which was African American high school students mentoring the kids on the caseload.
Wow, big HOPE, LEAD, and PACE.
We ain't got to legacy.
There's a legacy too?
Well, Project Legacy.
Yeah.
Oh, Project Legacy, yeah.
We ain't got to that one yet.
We haven't even got to that yet. Is there a question from the audience?
We had a couple of comments. Dee said that that it's about the system and structures, and also she said somebody else talked about the I believe he said something about I guess the people that's getting elected and getting to the office, and then they get polluted.
Right.
From the routine politician.
Right. And then the stuff doesn't. So this is my huge question.
Anybody got questions? Go ahead and tune in for questions if you got questions.
Yeah, I forgot to say that. Thanks for it. This is my question, and I'm going to take all the controversy here, John, and it's all on me, right? Given what you've done, we haven't even talked about Project Legacy. Well, let's get on that real quick, and then I'm gonna drop my big controversial question, which is Project Legacy obviously was ran by your wife Karen Edmonds. Can you describe that a little bit?
Well, Project Legacy is a program for youth of color, primarily 18 to 24, but we started doing some stuff, with some younger kids. And it's really recognizing legacy is important to me, okay? And so in stuff that I've presented on sort of this whole disproportionality disparity thing, I've described what I call a connections, access, legacy paradigm, which, if you look historically, and I mean really historically from the beginnings of this country, people have thrived and succeeded and moved forward because of connections they have and all that. Access to opportunities, and then which allowed them and enabled them to create wealth, and then to transfer wealth to successive generations. That's the legacy part. African Americans have been denied connections, access, legacy. So they've not been systematically denied. I mean, truly, in the sense of being prohibited from owning property, which has been the key historically, the key to wealth building and legacy building. And so Project Legacy is about restoring that connections, access, legacy process with primarily African American youth. and interrupting the pattern of generational poverty and exclusion from those opportunities. And so to do that, you need to, it's sort of like recreating the family. It's like, what have families done for their kids, and you know, to help them to create legacy as time has gone on. Black families have been denied those opportunities. So we're trying to create those opportunities.
Right.
In education, in housing, in counseling, and, you know, whatever it is the person needs. Yeah. We're trying to provide that, so that they can then interrupt that pattern and move forward.
Wow.
So
I've seen the work, and it's awesome work. You and Karen are doing awesome work with these kids. I've seen the kids involved with it. They really love it. They love it. Project Legacy.
It's also looking at, you know, Project Legacy is also, we're not an affiliate, but we're part of the Global Homeboy Network. So
yes.
If you know anything about that, you know, Father Greg Boyle out in LA has the largest gang rehab organization in the world. Yes. And so, and their principles align completely, really, with our principles, because it's really about, I mean, it's not just about stuff, it's about, or resources. It's about relationship.
Continued care. That's good.
Yeah, he talks about, and we kind of absolutely believe the same thing. It's radical kinship is one of the phrases he used. I mean, where you need to believe, and you need to love, and you need to support the people that we work with, the same as we do for our own kids.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And that has to be unconditional in the sense that you're not the worst thing you ever did. You know, so, and if you screw up, it's not that we're done with you. Right. You just need to get yourself back on track, and we take you back. I mean, so it's that kind. It's unconditional in that sense. Yeah. It's like we're never done with people. I mean, and folks sometimes ask, you know, what happens? I mean, who are your failures? You know, we don't have failures. We just have people who aren't ready at this point to make that kind of significant change.
I'm definitely a fan, man. I come in and volunteer anytime you guys need for anything. I'm definitely a fan of Project Legacy.
Yeah, and Karen has done the, I mean, to be honest, Karen has done the major work. I mean, but, you know, I've done, you know, if you go to our website and you look, I mean, I've done a lot of the writing about, you know, and the philosophical stuff about what it is that we're trying to do. But it's, to me, it's the embodiment of everything that both of us believe.
And it's amazing. So Project Dig, Project Pace, Hope, Lead, Legacy, I'm missing there. Those 6. Dig, Lead, Hope, Legacy, Pace, Project Legacy. Additionally, and I'm not trying to build you up, John, but you built yourself up. You've hired a lot of African American or minority staff. And aside from Mayo, you're probably from what I've seen, the lead in the sense of employing folks of color. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, but it's like you need to do it. I mean, and we're fortunate in that we had because Pace and Hope were in a contract. We had a contract with Family Service Rochester, so they had more flexibility than the county system did. Or at least, well, they did. That's true. That's real. And so that allowed us to do, you know, to be a little bit more, and it wasn't that we scrimped on qualifications, but it allowed us a little more freedom to recruit. Okay. I think that it's possible, and that's where we are with the council. It's possible for us to do the same thing.
Did you hear that, leaders of Rochester? Many times we've had, Bud and I have been doing this for 2 years, we've had leaders there, and no diss to the leaders, but they've said the opposite. We can't find them. Yeah.
You can't find them if you look in the same places.
Right. If you ain't looking right?
You know, if you
Leaders of Rochester, did you hear that?
Open up your eyes.
Yeah.
He said it here.
Right.
They are out here.
This is my big question, working with criminal justice, and you're a leader, and they recognize your leadership, and I was there at the DFO Community Corrections Task Force meeting when you came over and presented DIG. And this is no slight on Travis, who leads DFO. Travis and I have talked over the years about this many times, so this is no dig, and he knows where I stand on this. And no diss to his department or even law enforcement. My question continually is, given what you've done and other, even when I studied this, the research that I've done, social services has been on the cutting edge of being culture competent or wanting to be. Policies, the whole nine. Corrections, although they talk about evidence-based practices, they talk about historical trauma, all the stuff you're talking about, they are not going there with the lead, the legacy, or anything. They're not employing any programs in the end, or they're not trying to have a diverse staff. And I'm not saying Travis, DFO Community Corrections, and others are bad people or they're bad leaders. I'm not saying Travis is really trying to do a great job leading Olmsted County and being cutting edge and diverse, and his big one is being evidence-based. Why hasn't corrections in our law enforcement realized those things? Guess what? We have 30, 40, 50% of our population that are dealing with the issues that you've talked about with historical trauma, racism, legacy, all those things. Why are they stubborn? And I'm going to go with the word stubborn. Again, this is on me, to do the things that you've done in social services.
Well, I'm not sure that I would characterize it as being stubborn.
Okay.
I think that, because that kind of implies some intentionality, and I don't know that, I wouldn't necessarily ascribe intentionality.
You wouldn't go with the intentionality. I'm going there, but I'm
no, that's okay. I wouldn't. That wouldn't be the hill I would die on, is arguing that point with you. So
that is true.
You know, it's not that I would argue that so much, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. I mean, whatever the results are, it doesn't matter whether you meant it to be that way or
that's true.
It just accidentally happened that way. But I have seen. So over the years, I've been very frustrated. The one thing that I give myself credit for is being patient. And somebody
You're a cool brother. That is.
Calm and collected.
Yeah.
And so it's taken this amount of time to get to where we are.
That is
true. Like, okay, I mean, but I've been tenacious about trying to do all of these things, and it feels like there's this ocean liner and you're trying to turn it, and it's not going to be, can't be a quick turn, but it's moving in a direction.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, over the years I've seen leadership change. The leadership of corrections changed.
It did.
And so before Travis, I would have been on with you around.
I said at 9 a.m.
I would have been with you around it being intentional.
Right. Okay.
So, but I think since then, I mean, I've seen things that are happening over there. I mean, I think because what the council it's all of HHH. So that's corrections as well. And so we're starting to do things, or I'm starting to see things happen over there at that sort of organic level. One of the other things I didn't tell you about DIG was, so the council is made up of staff at all levels so anybody can be part of the council.
Okay.
You just have to make a commitment to being there for at least 2 years and working on this issue. So we've got line staff as well as supervisors and some other folks from administration. But the other part of what DIG does is within each of the departments, there is what's being called, used to be called teams of champions. There was staff at the staff level, people who would sort of keep the fire burning. Now they call them little digs, which is big dig and little dig. you know. So there are little digs in all of the departments, and there's one in corrections.
Okay.
And this is now, we're talking about something that's evolved in the past, or developed in the past year. So we're not talking about something that's been a long time in